Welcome to day 7, ladies and gentlemen. 7. All right. In spring 1938, Austria is reunited with Germany, and near the end of the school year, a Nazi official, an SS officer, accompanies Herr Vinke to class. The official introduces himself as Asmus, the senior district director of the Hitler Youth in Hammerbrook neighborhood. As you know, all eligible young people are required by law to join the Hitler Youth, Herr Asmus says crisply. It is your duty to serve the fatherland. Most of you already belong. I am here today to sign up the stragglers. Helmut is the first to be called. He stands, wishes he could drop through the floor. There was a time when Helmut longed to join, but living with Hugo has changed all that. Herr Asmus looks down at his orderly notes. Name? He asks, though Helmut can see his name printed there, plain as day, in the non-member column. Helmut stands straight, arms at his side, takes a deep breath, says, Gudat. Helmut Gudat. The director asks general questions about Helmut's family and their political beliefs, which Helmut answers briskly. Nein, I am not a member of the Hitler Youth. Nein, my mother is not a communist. Ja, my mother's name is Emma Gudat Kunkel. My mother is divorced from her first husband, Johannes Kunkel. I have 2 older half-brothers, Hans and Gerhard Kunkel. My mother never remarried my father. Herr Asmus looks up at Helmut. A mocking smile crosses his face. She is engaged to marry Hugo Hubner, says Helmut. At this, Asmus arches one eyebrow, says, Hubner, you say, the Rattenführer? Ja. Asmus nods in approval. Ach ja, he says, the Rattenführer is a good Nazi. He pries no further. He scribbles a notation and then hands Helmut a paper to sign and another to get signed at home. Helmut takes the first paper and signs his name, assuring that he is 100% Aryan, not one drop of Jewish blood. He has the documentation to prove it for 6 generations. Welcome, says Asmus. Here's the address where your Kamschradaf meets. He slides a piece of paper towards Helmut. Report Wednesday at 7 o'clock sharp. Moody doesn't fuss at all, and the next day Hugo surprises Helmut with a brown Jungvolk shirt and the 10 pfennig for dues. Few men are born to lead, the rest are born to follow, he tells Helmut. You are a leader, my boy, I can tell. All that spring and into the summer, Helmut busies himself with the Jungvolk, its meetings and games, weekend hiking and camping trips. Oma and Opa complain when Helmut misses church, and that's something that Helmut misses too. But Hugo tells Oma and Opa that it's Helmut's duty. God expects young people to serve the fatherland, he says. It's one of the sacrifices young Germans must make for their country. He beams as he looks at Helmut. Isn't that right, my boy? The sound of feet ring outside. Oh, flash forward. The sound of feet ring outside Helmut's cell. A key turns in the lock and the door swings open. Helmut catches his breath, releases it slowly. It's the morning guard, exercise time. Helmut picks up his slop bucket, carries it outside, waits his turn to empty it, hose it out. Everything feels magnified in the prison yard. The crisp autumn air, the grass, the trees, the leaves, red, yellow, orange, the sky, blue clouds, white sun, yellow, so much color, so much air, so much light, so much everything, it hurts. The guard barks a command. The prisoners trudge clockwise around the prison yard, marching single file on the worn path, their gray prison smocks billowing like wings of birds. It's verboten to speak to the other prisoners. Helmut keeps his head down, avoids their faces, doesn't want to see the new faces or the missing faces after the executioner has done his work. He looks down at his thin legs, his knobby knees, his worn leather boots, no shoelaces, the grass, the dirt. Thinks instead about his 2 best friends, Ruby Wobie and Karl-Heinz Schnibby. Sees Rudy's worried face, Karl's big grin, a face comfortable with smiling. The boys lived in different neighborhoods and attended different schools, but they belonged to the same Mormon church. There aren't many Mormons in Hamburg, and their church is housed in a factory building in the St. George district of Hamburg. It seemed as though the 3 boys were destined to be friends from the day they met in primary class at church. All right, flashback. By summer 1938, the city's parks have sprouted signs of forbidding Jews to enter. Churches, too, for the Nazis declare that even Jews who convert to Christianity are still Jews. Such a sign is even posted at Helmut's church to protect the church from Jews. This is what the branch president says after he sees the Gestapo sitting in the back of the church taking notes. The Nazis watch everything: the churches, schools, places people work, but church members protest and tear down the sign after 1 week. The Hitler Youth Jungvolk meetings keep Helmut busy, and several weeks pass before Helmut sees his friend Rudy Wolbe. When he does, it's by chance that they meet. Helmut is sitting on a park bench reading a detective novel. Rudy sits himself down next to Helmut. "Where have you been?" he asks. Helmut dog-ears the page and closes the book. "Jungvolk," he says. Rudy scowls. "You joined?" Helmut nods, and Rudy grows silent, giving the bobbing mallards his undivided attention. Helmut knows Rudy had a bad experience in the Jungvolk, that he quit after his squad had roughed him up. Karl Schneebe's experience wasn't much better, except that Karl was expelled after he beat up his zealous platoon leader. Karl has no patience for Nazis or bullies. "So, you're a Nazi now," says Rudy. Helmut stares at a pair of ducks, circling each other, admires how smooth and unruffled they look, but beneath the water, they're pedaling furiously. "Hugo bought me the shirt and paid the dues," he says to Rudy. "I could not refuse. But don't mistake me for a Nazi. I'm nothing like Hugo." He doesn't want to tell Rudy that there are things he actually likes about the Jungvolk. The weekend hiking, the camping trips that take him away from the Strattenhaus flat that feels so full of Hugo. There's also a special Hitler Youth section for older boys that intrigues him. The H.J. Stridenfondest, a patrol force whose members act as junior Gestapo. He likes the idea of detective work, of working to serve and protect the public. But that doesn't make him a Nazi. If Helmut were a detective, he'd arrest real criminals, not the ordinary men and women who criticize Hitler, the Nazi Party, and find themselves denounced by friends and neighbors. Helmut glances back at Rudy. He can tell he's brooding. "You'd like this book," Helmut says, changing the subject. He reads out the title: Lord Lister, Genet Raffles der Gross Ubenkante. It's about a gentleman thief who helps honest men ruined by swindlers. Silence. "The thief twists the law," says Helmut, "but he does so for honorable mentions, to bring dishonest men to justice. He robs the robbers." "Like Robin Hood," says Rudy. "Exactly," says Helmut. Helmut has missed his friend, finds himself irritated that the Jungvolk duty has kept them apart. Suddenly, Helmut is struck with an idea, one that will restore their friendship. "Rudy, we should start our own detective agency," he says. Rudy looks at him incredulously. "And play detective like children?" "No," says Helmut. "Have you noticed all the unsolved crimes in the newspaper? The police say they need our help. It's our duty to report suspicious activity." "Do you mean spy on our neighbors?" Rudy's eyes narrow with disgust. "The Nazis have enough informers." "No, real crimes, you know, robberies and murders." "We can't do that. We're not old enough. The police will laugh at us." "No, they won't," says Helmut. "Not when they see that we can think like adults." He taps his head with his forefinger. "And we have an advantage. We're young, so criminals won't suspect us. We'll get more information that way." "It's impossible," says Rudy. "You're talking about the Gestapo." He shudders. "I'd rather steer clear of them. A lot of people disappear after the Gestapo visit." "I'm not afraid of the Gestapo," says Helmut. He straightens his shoulders and juts out his chin. "When we crack our first case, we'll be famous. Maybe they'll even offer us a reward or a job. Come on, it can't hurt to try." Helmut watches Rudy's face. Everything Rudy thinks shows on his face. Before Rudy says so, Helmut can see his face shift into agreement. "Sure," says Rudy. "Okay, why not? We'll be detectives." The discomfort between the two friends has fallen away. Helmut crooks his arm around Rudy's neck. "This'll be fun." The next day, Helmut hands Rudy a small card. The card reads, "Lord Lister, Detective Agency." Rudy holds the card by its edges and whistles under his breath. "You made these yourself? They look real." "They are real," says Helmut. Rudy reads further. "Helmut Godot, Agent Number 1. Rudy Wolbe, Agent Number 2. He grins, tucks his card into his wallet. Come on, says Helmut. Let's go down to the police station and see what crimes they have for us. Helmut and Rudy head north toward the local police station at Hamadok 57. An odd, watchful silence hangs over the forbidding brick building. They stand outside and watch as 4 SS men exit the front doors, green files tucked under their arms, striding toward Gvinveg. 2 other men, wearing coats and hats of Gestapo agents, stride past without even a glance at the boys. Helmut thought about wearing his Hitler Youth uniform, but settled upon wearing good brown trousers and a white shirt. The trousers and shirt make him look more grown up. He walks crisply to the heavily wooden door and pulls it open. Maybe this isn't such a good idea, says Rudy, firmly rooted on the sidewalk. He's also dressed in his best dark trousers and a white shirt. Come on, urges Helmut. You don't have to say a word. I'll do the talking. What are you going to say? I don't know. I'll figure it out inside. Rudy trapezes behind Helmut. The foyer feels cool and dark as they walk down the hall. Reading the gold-lettered names on the titles of doors, Helmut stops outside a detective's office and reads the name, Inspector Becker. Seems as good as a name as any other. Helmut turns the doorknob. A blonde secretary sits at a gleaming wooden desk. Helmut introduces himself, asks to speak with Inspector Becker. She hesitates, but Helmut tells her that he and Rudy wish to do their duty as citizens. She leaves her desk, raps on the door behind her, and disappears inside. When she returns, she ushers the boys into a wood-paneled office that smells of cigarette smoke. A balding man with strands of dark hair combed carefully across his head sits behind another wooden desk, polished to a sheen that reflects the glow of the lamp. With his white shirt and red bow tie, Inspector Becker looks more like a banker than an inspector. He sets a green folder flat on the desk blotter, motions to a pair of dark leather chairs. The boys sit, and Becker leans back. He thrums the tips of his fingers together, smiles thinly, and says, So you boys are here to do your duty as citizens. There Becker has a broad, blunt face, and Helmut notes that his eyes don't match his smile. Yes, sir, he says. The smile fades. Do you have information for me? Perhaps you know somebody who's breaking the law, a neighbor or relative or teacher, perhaps. Something you've overheard, some suspicious activity? No, sir. Nothing like that. My partner and I, Helmut nods at Rudy, want to help the police solve crimes. Becker's expression changes, grows less pleasant. I am a busy man with no time to waste with childish games. He picks up a folder, taps it against the desk, sticks it on top of a short stack of files. This isn't a game, sir, says Helmut. We think like adults, even better than adults. And because we're... He starts to say children, but catches himself, starts over and says, because we're young, adults let their guard down. They're less cautious about what they say. That works to our advantage. Becker's chair squeaks as he sits back. Eyes Helmut, then Rudy carefully. I consider myself a good judge of people, he says at last. You're smart, curious, not afraid to take initiative. I'll bet you can put 2 and 2 together. Helmut leans forward. We can! Inspector Becker tugs open a desk drawer, fingers through several files, and takes out a slim folder, spreads it open on his desks. He thumbs through the newspaper clippings, pulls one out. Here's an open case. A streetwalker was murdered in Rothbergsport. Helmut looks wide-eyed at Rudy, at the luck of it all. Then back at the inspector. We know that neighborhood. Helmut thumbs at Rudy. That's where my partner lives. The inspector nods. See what you can find out. Let me know. He pours himself a cup of coffee, offers one to Helmut and Rudy. Helmut shakes his head and says no thanks. Mormons don't drink coffee. Though Helmut likes the deep, rich smell. Inwardly, he feels pleased that Becker asked. It's a sign that the inspector takes him seriously. All right, we'll stop right there for the day.